Ladies and gentlemen, this is Report of the Week, and we are now on the air. Tuesday, walking in the office right now. It's a Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. April. Already, I'm just not feeling this week. I don't know. I'm just not feeling this week. Had a rough day today. So, you ever have one of those days you're just mad, something happened, whatever. Sometimes you blame yourself for it. Sometimes you say to yourself, how could you be so effing stupid about the whatever. You know what I'm talking about. You have a rough day. So tonight I'm gonna have to take a good long walk and relieve myself of some of the stress. Had a rough day, and then I got that idiot still there on Reddit. He got banned, but he keeps coming back. No, you know what? Let him. Just let him. I don't care. I don't care anymore. So here we are. I certainly hope you're doing alright. You must be. Probably better than me. But, you know what? It's the end of a Tuesday. 3 more days. Just 3 more days, and then we're home free, right? 3 more days, guys. We can make it. We can hold out, and 3 more days. Just 3 more. I think we'll make it. I think we will. Well, let's start off the show. Today we'll still be talking about Shortwave Radio. First off, though, let's read the fan mail. Let's see what's in today's mailbag, and let's see what's going on. YouTube.com/The Report of the Week. Hope you enjoy. Enjoy the video review, brah. Crazy Russian lady. Alright, let's watch this. Is she really that crazy? Oh, that's a woman? Good God. She's got like slop coming out of her mouth. It's like this old babushka there, screaming and yelling. God knows what with all this slop coming out of her mouth. Doesn't look like a woman, doesn't sound like a woman, but... boy. Alright. Hey, just a small concern about your show. No need to be concerned, I got this all under control. It really sounds like the last 2 videos you were sent and watched on your show were spam. Yeah, I know they were spam. It doesn't bother me. I've randomly sent Rubik's Cube videos too. The last one with the funny video clip in the title couldn't have sounded spammier, so I suggest if you're sent a video and something in the message doesn't specifically address you or the show, I'd skip over it. Nah, I'd rather not. Personally, it doesn't bother me. I mean, they have they send them to so many people, each video has like 20, 30,000 views. So one view isn't going to do anything. I don't care. I'd personally rather just watch it and share my thoughts on the video than skip over it. At least have some fun with the crap they send me. Hello, VORW. Thanks for the explanation on radio broadcast. Very interesting. Regards. Thank you. I really was concerned about that. I didn't know how it would go exactly, but I'm glad at least someone enjoyed the show. Certainly not my most popular show. Definitely say that. What a break. Not even, 400 views. I don't do it for the views, though. I'm glad. Hopefully there were, maybe like 20 people who got something out of it, and that's what I do it for. I know there's people out there that this radio doesn't interest them in the least. Well, then fine. But for those of you that do, I'm glad you're hanging in there, and I'm glad you're getting something out of this show. Hi, the Report of the Week. I like your videos and your dressing style. You are cool. I like fedoras, and I wear them because of Michael Jackson. He was certainly an icon, Mr. Jackson. Anyways, I like your energy drink videos, but I do think you could possibly get more and rarer drinks if you go to various places, not just the normal ones. I expect great things from you in the future. God bless you. And likewise. Certainly take that into consideration. Hello. I'd like to say I'm a big fan and I admire your style of clothing and speech. I'm wondering a couple of things. What is the most exotic meal you've ever had? Your reviews are mostly on fast food, and maybe you could try something different one day. Thanks for the great videos. Keep up the VORW. I find them relaxing. Oh, no problem. Most exotic meal I've had, I don't know. I keep the stuff very bland. I don't know. Steak? Seriously, I keep a bland diet. I'd have to put some thought into that one. Maybe I'll get back to you there, or maybe I'll talk about it in a later show, but I gotta put some thought into that. First off, all I'd like to say is that I wish I was your older brother so I could mess up people that are hateful towards you, IRL and OL. Secondly, I'd like to ask how old you are. You act mature, but you have an old/young look to you. You look old and young at the same time. Basically, anyway, I hope you keep with it, because I know your success will continue to grow. Cheers. Well, I refuse to disclose my age. People have said, oh yeah, he looks like he's 13, 14, 15. No, I'm older than that. I'm definitely older than that. I'm not 30, not that old, but I'm not 14 or 15. So, I'd say, if I had to give a spectrum, I would say upper teens, lower 20s. As age, I really am not going to pinpoint my age. I'm not going to specifically say, oh yeah, I'm blah, blah, blah. But there you go. That's at least enough of a spectrum there so you could understand. New terms of YouTube partnership from VSP Group. Delete. Greetings. Hello, my good man. When I first saw your video, I have to admit I was a little confused looking at the sight of a young man in a vintage suit that looks good and makes reviews of fast food and energy drinks. What a strange combination. Yes, indeed. I'm not going to lie to you there. It's not the most normal combination. There was something in you that attracted me to continue to watch your videos. I was amazed at your thoughts about ordinary life problems, that full of sincerity and simple humanity that is rarely seen in this cynical modern age. Ignore the hateful comments. You are above them. You have your vision of life, and all I could say, Godspeed, bro. Mark. Take care. Thank you. There was this one guy on Reddit. I think I referred to him in the last show. The name of Vigilance 1989. I believe that's the name. I referred to him in the other show, and listen, if you're listening, you know who you are. I'm addressing you right now. We had a little feud the other day over over that one post about the suicide, and clearly you were upset about that. You got banned, but you came back to further express your dissent. You went on 4chan and tried to express it there. And I have a few words for you about this stuff, so listen up. After everything you've done, you've been a long-time contributor to my subreddit. You've posted a lot of good stuff, and now you've came to this. So I just want to tell you this. I'm sorry. And I apologize for anything I said to him. Of course, I was on the defense here, but it's only right to issue an apology to him. I doubt he's listening to this anymore, but if he is, it's only right to apologize for my remarks to him. I simply handled your post with professionalism, and unfortunately, if that didn't meet your standards of a reply, I apologize. There's nothing more that can be done, and as we go our separate ways, I wish you all the best. Once again, similar to yesterday, pretty much positive, with the exception of you-know-who. But as I said before, he just keeps coming back and making new accounts, and I don't care. Let him. We'll find better things to do eventually, but for now, oh well. Lecture 2 about shortwave radio. So, we're just going to start off where the other one left off. You know, I was talking about how the different modes of listening to the radio. You have AM mode, for pretty much regular broadcast stations. You have FM mode for higher frequency signals. You have single sideband mode, which is for smaller signals. And a signal that's to the right is known as is listened to in something called USB mode, and a signal to the left is listened to in LSB mode. But they're both referred to as single sideband mode. And then there's a final mode of listening known as CW. CW mode is very thin reception. It's for like very thin signals, such as primarily for listening to Morse code signals. So that's where CW comes into play. So CW, that's ideal for listening to very thin signals, pretty much for Morse code only. So it's pretty much when you're in that mode, it's really nearly impossible to try to tune into a Morse broadcast the wrong way. Obviously, Morse code is still heavily utilized in shortwave radio, but you don't have to learn it if you don't want to. There's decoders available online, so all that software is readily available. So CW mode, as known. Where were we here? Sorry if I just cut off right there. The CW mode is, once again, for very thin broadcasts like Morse transmissions. The SSB, be it USB or LSB, is for like smaller voice transmissions and some other sounds. FM is for large communications, such as high-frequency stations, or amateurs, typically CB radio people. Then there's AM, which is for main broadcast stations, be it AM stations or shortwave stations. I know I'm talking about all this stuff, and you figure, well, what am I going to do with it? I got the knowledge now, so how am I going to use it? There's a program online known as a web SDR. That's like a shortwave radio online. So wherever the web SDR software, it's like this big software that basically converts a shortwave radio to something you could listen to online. Wherever that's located, that's where you'd be able to pick up signals. For instance, there's this one really cool one in the Netherlands, and I tune to that all the time. So you could pick up stations that you'd be able to pick up in the Netherlands with a shortwave radio. So I listen to that a lot. And a lot of the stuff I've recorded has been recorded from that site. And I know I talk about this site all the time, and you're thinking, well, I'm telling you all this stuff, how am I going to be able to use it? You'll be able to use it on that site if you ever choose to do so. I may not be telling you about the site yet, because you have to think of it this way. If you want to learn how to drive a car, they're not going to immediately put you behind the wheel and start telling you to just drive. They're going to tell you how the car works first, and then they'll put you behind the wheel. The same thing works here. I'm just pretty much letting you know all the terminology and all the stuff and how to hear signals properly, and then I'll just basically let you do whatever you want on that site. So tomorrow, I'm going to start going over that site, the WebSDR site, and how it works, and then we're going to start covering specific signals, where I'll talk about various stations, the histories thereof, the famous UVB-76, and its sister stations, the not-so-well-regarded PIP and Squeaky Wheel. Believe it or not, I actually know someone who works for one of those stations, so you could say I've solved the mystery behind UVB-76. Talk about numbers, stations, and anything else. So I think that's when if you don't consider this interesting, which I don't blame you, it's going to get a lot more interesting, hopefully, in the coming days. So please hang in there. Now, we know about the different modes of listening now. And we know some of the signals, the general broad signals that you can listen to them on. There's one thing I forgot to mention. I said the shortwave spectrum is pretty much divided from the frequencies of 1,700 kilohertz to around 29,000 kilohertz. That's a very large group of frequencies. And all these frequencies are organized. They're organized into sections known as bands. If they weren't organized, it would be a complete mess. You would have amateurs mixing in with the broadcasters. You'd have machines transmitting on top of broadcast stations. You'd have amateurs being jammed by, whatever. So all the frequencies are organized for the most part. They're divided into various bands. And there's two main types of bands. You have the broadcast bands and the amateur bands. And these bands are allocated spaces of frequencies dedicated to a certain thing. The broadcast bands are allocated spaces of frequencies spread throughout, which are devoted to powerful broadcasters, like international broadcasters, such as, obviously, the famous BBC, or any other stations broadcasting. They legally can broadcast within that space. Of course, there's stations that broadcast out of those bands. Usually the bands are still pretty heavily populated by stations, even for about 100 frequencies after they end. So there is some spillover there. And then there are the amateur bands. That's, for instance, if you wanted to buy a ham radio, as some people call them. I'm sure you've heard the term ham before. That's a name given to amateur radios and amateur radio operators. If you wanted to get into that, you would get your license and you would be permitted to broadcast in an allocated area known as the amateur band. So those two main parts, the amateur bands and the broadcast bands, I'd say there's about, between 5 and 10 of each, spread throughout. And those are allocated spaces for different types of stations. Now, in between those bands, there are different areas. Some of them are allocated maybe to maritime communications. And then sometimes you just have empty space, which anyone and anything could broadcast on. That's where you have UVB 76 broadcasting in. It's just broadcasting an empty space between two bands. Along with that, you have sometimes machines and machines transmitting data. You might have digital modems transmitting stuff. A lot of machines, though. You might have number stations that just pop up out of nowhere and start transmitting there. You might have the occasional pirate station going. And what have you. Sometimes massive radars take up that space. So that's where everything else goes for the most part. In between the bands, in between the empty, unorganized space there. That being said, well, I've been talking about the AM stations and the CW stations and all the different modes to listen to, but I haven't provided you anything, really, to listen to. So without further ado, we'll now be playing various clips of stations that I've recorded today in various modes and what they are supposed to sound like. And then there'll be a few examples of what they aren't supposed to sound like. First, you will listen to AM stations and what they would sound like if tuned in correctly. What I'll be doing now is scanning through one of the broadcast bands. I believe it's the 31 meter band. If not, excuse me. But I'll be scanning through, I believe, the 31 meter broadcast band, pretty much at its highest popularity. So there's probably about, maybe 40, 50 stations broadcasting here of all different languages and concepts, but I would just scan through the band, tune in on each station for a few seconds, so number one, you could hear how they would sound properly tuned, and number two, you could just get a variety of what's being transmitted at any given time. So without further ado, sit back, grab the good old popcorn and Monster Energy, and listen in.
Rose regime was deposed to people power in 1986, but continued their schemes to this day. Most countries in Southeast Asia, including Indonesia.
As you said, you are going to have the general elections next year. Isn't it going to be
Ist ergebnislos zu Ende gegangen. Das ist die zweite. Recorded his second NHL shutout with 31.
Hodri meydan. Türk halkı bu kararı görsün.
Baby, you light up my world like nobody else. The way that you flip your hair gets me overwhelmed. But when you smile at the ground, it ain't hard to tell.
Doresc acest lucru. Dimineața, ministrul israelian de externe, Avigdor Lieberman, aflat în stat...
para facilitarles la integración, conociendo la lengua española.
رشا سلطان 11 نقطة عن هامل.
我有点爬不动了。
Não aguento mais esse cara.
Chers auditeurs, nous vous présentons les...
Barışçıl da bir simge. Aynı zamanda işte uyumu.
It's great. People are fond of magic.
A really significant public move for demonstrations at this point. This isn't, an economic crisis in which you're going to see people coming to the streets out of desperation. Things certainly are not nearly that bad. In fact,
Les responsables d'adhésion atteignent.
我经常去健身房。
You always should be looking for an environment in which jobs are being created.
Et on part tout de suite à Stamford Bridge où les joueurs, notamment les joueurs.
Bourré et dans la joie beaucoup. What the government has done on all of those areas, but to try to portray this as being basically an austerity crisis and that Britain's falling apart.
Bien entendu, es-tu plutôt un chrétien ou une chrétienne qui obéit à la parole de Dieu, ou au contraire, es-tu un chrétien ou une
So there we have it. There were a lot of stations there that we listened to. Now, if some of them sounded absolutely terrible, I'm covering myself here. It wasn't because of my poor work, it's because of their poor transmitter. There's one notorious station out there known as Radio Cairo, from Cairo, Egypt, which is using completely broken software and mechanisms to try to transmit with. So they always sound unrecognizable and completely terrible, and completely garbled and just terrible sounding. So that's Radio Cairo. There are other various stations. The station we tuned into at the beginning with the Asian music, that was actually a Chinese jamming station. That was jamming a station from the U.S. trying to broadcast into China to give the people democracy and information, which they obviously don't want. So there's all sorts of stations, and tomorrow and the next day we'll discuss every station out there, and we'll talk about number stations and pirate stations and all that interesting stuff. But that's what AM stations are supposed to sound like. That's what they're supposed to sound like. You heard them. A lot of them were pretty clear. Even if you couldn't understand what they were saying, you could at least hear a recognizable voice. There were a few English stations. There was that music station with that ungodly, whatever that boy band's name was, One Direction, and all of that. That's what they were supposed to sound like. It's very difficult to improperly tune into an AM station. Almost impossible to do so. Nearly impossible. So we will then jump to SSB stations. The station we will be using, two stations actually, we'll be using as an example, is a numbers station, which I recorded minutes after I actually recorded the other one, and then an aviation weather station coming out of Ireland. So first off, we will play you a recording of the numbers station. This station is coming out of Ukraine, believed to be sending coded messages to spies abroad through groups of numbers. So this one is from Ukraine, and this is how it's supposed to sound, properly tuned.
один, 3, 9, 3, 5, 0. 3, 9, 3, 5, 0. 9, 0. 8, 9, 0. 8, 6, 6, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
Purpose I briefly explained it to you back then and there, and we'll definitely almost dedicate an entire episode to those. I'm a big enthusiast of them. I have hundreds and hundreds of recordings of them that I post to nearly every site. I'm a major contributor in the world of numbers stations. Next, we'll jump over to the aviation weather station, where we will show you how it should and shouldn't sound, and I'm sure you'll be able to clearly hear the differences. Remember, when you're tuning to a station in that mode, make sure you're on the frequency. With little to no variation, you have to be on the exact frequency just to ensure, really, for optimal sound quality. Let's listen in.
Degrees and
So you have it. I really hope you could hear the clear differences there. And finally, actually, we'll listen to this station from the U.S. Air Force, sending what is known as an EAM. That's an emergency action message in NATO phonetics. What those are believed to do is actually, those are apparently nuclear launch codes. I'm not joking with you there. Though the majority of these are test messages, there's always a chance that the message they could be sending is actual nuclear launch codes. So that's just interesting. We'll talk about EAMs later on. So that was also another example of how it should and shouldn't sound. So if you're, when you're tuning in and it sounds like the latter with that either high-pitched whine or too low, then you're probably not on the right frequency. And finally, we'll listen, or actually second to last, we'll listen to what CW stations sound. Right now we'll be on the amateur band, and we'll listen to a few amateur Morse transmissions. as you could really see, it's almost impossible to tune into one of those the wrong way. The only way you could is if you're listening to it with the wrong mode, and that's AM or FM. AM or FM really cannot be capable of receiving Morse transmissions correctly. CW is the way to go. You could also listen to a Morse transmission in SSB, that's USB or LSB. However, if you wished to do that, it would actually sound more like the classic Morse, how the classic Morse is supposed to sound, more higher pitched. However, in the professional community, it's it's not as highly regarded as using the proper CW mode to listen to Morse transmissions. Now, most transmissions in Morse code are used by amateur radio operators. However, there are other stations that transmit in Morse code, specifically numbers stations. There are probably about 20 to 40 active number stations from different governments and countries that still transmit in Morse code. So we'll definitely focus in on that also in the Morse code in the number station episode. And last but not least, FM stations. They're pretty easy to spot, especially when you're using the web SDR. They're very easy to spot. Their signal looks like no other. So you'll easily be able to spot them, and you'll easily be able to tune into them. Without further ado, I present you a CB radio conversation.
Kijk, dat zeker natuurlijk weg. De stroom, ja. Helemaal links.
Ja, er zit zeker eentje in, Willy. Kijk, je kunt het kapje zo vanaf doen, hè. Je hebt hier gewoon, ik heb hier op een voeding staan.
So that's obviously the correct way to listen to it. Similar to AM and CW, there's really no way to make it sound unintentionally bad. The only mode that could really happen to is SSB, so you really have to be careful with that. But the other types of modes, you really should have no problem properly tuning into a signal there. As well, a lot of amateurs, those guys are probably truckers or what have you, probably European, they're obviously not speaking English. But here are a few amateurs in the US talking, also using the FM mode. So there you go there, properly tuned in as well. I always feel kind of guilty listening to that. I feel like I'm listening to almost like a cell phone conversation, but then you figure, well, they're the ones broadcasting, so they should expect that anyone, anywhere, can be listening to what they're saying. So they should truly have no shame in what they're talking about. But there you go with that. So those are different modes and different examples thereof. That's all we have planned for today's lecture. This is the report of the week. Tomorrow, we'll start getting into the fun stuff. Now that we've talked about basically what shortwave radio is, the different parts of it, the different signals, and ways to receive them, examples of each, frequency allocations, and examples of proper and improper tuning, I think it's time to really jump ahead and start learning how to use the web SDR software. That's really a good place to start off before you go out and buy your own shortwave radio. So tomorrow we're going to talk all about the web SDR software, how to use it, and I hope to get to you then. This is the report of the week with VORW signing off. Take care all.